Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
Welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number
69.
69 with my special guest Dan Clarton and co-host, investor partner extraordinaire. God, what we can talk about today. There's so much going on. It was like the craziest day ever. What do we start with? That 2-flat we're working on, that rental property we got. We got guys working over there, and we needed to meet and go over stuff and call some extra contractors. What else?
Just think of all those gallons of paint we bought were beer.
What if they were beer?
Yeah, that'd be a big party.
Wow, that would have been a great day then. That would have been so much fun.
Let's see, how many gallons did we buy?
25.
And there's 7 cases to a half barrel.
Yeah, that's true.
That sounds like a college kegger party to me.
College Investor Empowerment Series college kegger party. That could be a great Christmas party if we ever get around to it. So today we've got Dan in the house. We got our meetup tonight, which we've been getting ready for. We filmed a little commercial earlier today for one of the opportunities we're offering out to some investors here shortly in the Chicagoland area. How about this meetup tonight, though? The Fix and Flip Focus Group.
It's a sellout.
Oh, I know. We had to close down, the first time ever, we had to actually close down the attendee list. We had to stop the RSVPs because it's too much. Isn't that crazy?
I think that says a lot about the camaraderie that's being enjoyed here, the content that's being provided, and the value that people see, because people's most valuable resource is their time.
Yeah.
And when they choose to spend their Tuesday nights hanging out, with us.
With us cool guys.
It makes you wonder, well, what else isn't going on in their life? No, obviously I'm kidding.
That's funny.
And we enjoy it too.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a lot of fun. I know we talk about it all the time, but we do a segment called the Fix and Flip Focus Group where we bring investors out to multiple locations in the immediate area of the location of our meetup, which is an office, my office, Tanis Group's office in Chicagoland area. So within about 5 minutes of here, there's 3 different houses we're going to see tonight owned by 3 different investors that attend our meetup. So one is a fix to rent type situation, one is a fix and flip situation, and the third one is actually a property Dan and I just finished. That is a fix and flip situation as well. I don't know why I keep saying situation.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it came out awesome. I'm really excited about number one, selling that property and getting under contract, because I know we will, but also having the group visit it tonight. So typically we see 30 people or so. Tonight we've got we've got 40 people signed up for this event tonight, which I'm totally excited about. So we're going to walk through 3 different sets of houses. And totally pumped about tonight. We just had 2 new investors actually in the office today that are interested in getting into the fix and flip arena. If you have 0 exposure or a lot of exposure or medium exposure to this type of an environment as far as investing in real estate, we'd love to meet you in person, have you come out, talk some deal talk, do some case studies. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing tonight. It's like a live case study where we walk these properties, we go through the purchase price, we go through the type of work that was done, how much it cost, maybe some of the challenges that came up, and the successes of each individual property that's a flip to rent or a fixed to rent or a fixed to flip. And then we come back to the office and obviously recap and do some further networking and maybe have a beer.
And I think what's so compelling about the kind of meeting that we're having tonight is because, I've often said that, real estate is a lot like, high school chemistry class. You have lecture and you have lab. And what happens so often in all the real estate circles is gatherings are always held in meeting rooms, in offices, at the library, a coffee shop, wherever. And the reality is, real estate happens in properties.
Yeah.
And so when we get an opportunity to go out and see actual properties as a group, ask questions of each other, evaluate the finishes. What do you think you might have done here? I like the colors. What did you use? That's just really exciting because that's where the rubber meets the road.
I agree. No, it's a great event, great opportunity for all types of investors to get together and see what's going on. I think the most important point about it is how often do you get to actually physically see what the quote-unquote competition or the other investors in your market are doing when they're flipping houses for fix and flip or fix to rent. Like what's actually going on. I mean, as an investor, unless you have a close friendship with another investor, which I'm sure many of you do, but then you're only exposed to one individual's tastes or decisions and choices. Like, where else can you find 3 different houses, 3 different owners that are all investors, all doing a similar strategy, and then compare the differences, maybe come up with some ideas on your own? I mean, that's the best part, in my opinion.
No, I was, as you were saying that, I was just thinking the same thing, because it wasn't that long ago where we would do one of these kind of things and we'd go see 2 or 3 properties and they were all ours.
Yep.
And so now within the group, we have other investors that now as a group we're going to see their properties. And I think what's happening with the group itself, as the people in the group get better and more experienced, it elevates the entire group as a whole. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, again, if you're interested in learning more about that or joining us at one of our future events, you can find both of our groups on meetup.com. Dan Clarton's group is the Action and Accountability Group, and mine is the Chicagoland Investor Empowerment Series. You can just type it in the search bar, and we'll pop up in there. Or shoot us an email. You can get a hold of me, joe@tannisgroupllc.com. That said, that was our plug from our featured sponsor. Just kidding. Let's talk about what we actually want to talk about tonight, which is another special new announcement about some new opportunities for investors in the Illinois market and how they can benefit their business, or how it can benefit their business in the future.
Yep.
So one of the necessary evils of completing a real estate transaction, either as a buyer or a seller, is something that a lot of investors, I think, don't really give a lot of thought to. And that would be title insurance. If you don't know what title insurance is, it's basically an insurance policy for the ownership and any type of discrepancies that are either in place or have been corrected regarding the title or the chain of ownership of a property that you're either buying or selling. That can be anything from, hey, this driveway is 6 inches over onto the neighbor's property, to, oh, there's an old loan or mortgage that hasn't been released on this property, we need to correct that. It's basically creating a clean and marketable title/property for that investor or that new buyer or seller, regardless of who they are. So title insurance is typically used on every transaction where there's a buyer and seller involved. There are some cases where it's not. That would be more like a sheriff's sale auction, or even when you buy directly from a bank as an REO property, you're actually getting title insurance. They have to sell it via clean title, though there are some cases where banks will sell stuff via quitclaim deed, but that's a topic for another day. So that was a brief overview of what title insurance is. Now let's talk about some of those little dirty secrets that no one else seems to know about really how it's a costly endeavor that a lot of people don't even give consideration to, even when they're at the closing table, because they figure it's just something that they have to pay for.
Well, you do have to pay for it.
Well, I mean,
but
whatever that price is.
Right.
Right.
It seems like it falls into that category of it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, over time, and I'm thinking about different properties I've bought, I have never had control of the process, and I've been traded to a half a dozen different title companies in town. And I never really understood, well, why are we over here? Oh, I've never been here before, and I didn't know what the difference is. It never occurred to me if there's a cost difference, because it is what it is.
Right. You just need to have title insurance.
You got to have it. You got to go to a closing.
You got to have it.
And you get the master statement, and it's got all these fees, and it's got these all the stuff, and you look at it, you go,
There's $1,000. There's $1,000. There's $300. There's $100.
Here's an update here. Here's this over here. There's, I don't know what CPL means, but there it is, and they're charging me for it. And, okay, sign here, and you're all excited to get the property, or you're so excited to sell the property, and in all that excitement, this just becomes a complete afterthought.
That's 100% true. What I was going to remark about was the fact that you spend, God, I'm using big words, an egregious amount of time and effort and probably emotional distress negotiating a property to the right price. Sometimes deals bust apart over $500, right? You spend, let's say, whether you're using a broker, you're going direct to a seller, you're a buyer, seller, whatever it is, you're negotiating a transaction, and you spend a lot of time and heartache worrying about what that price is. And let's just say it's $100,000 for the sake of the discussion. And then you get to closing, and not only are you, let's say, paying the $100,000 or receiving that as your seller proceeds when you sell a property, then there's all these other costs in there that no one really ever even talked to you about sometimes.
No. There's
right?
never a discussion about it. And, it just occurred to me, one of the reasons why it gets masked, if you will, is because I don't know how it works in other states. Maybe it's the same. But in Illinois, we pay taxes a year in the rears. So at closing, you get a tax proration,
right,
which means if you're buying a house for $100,000 and the taxes are $5,000 a year, basically you're buying it for $95,000.
Depending on the time of year, yeah.
Depending on the time of year. And then what happens is then they lump the $4,000 closing costs against that, and they kind of always have a way of outweighing each other. So you're right back to the 100 you started at. So
yeah,
you're all good.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
And Illinois might be an independent animal because our property taxes are rather healthy.
Steep.
Healthy for our great nation. So just something to consider. So what Dan and I realized after doing multiple transactions, separate and together, is that, man, we really needed to get a handle on these costs, because I think our first year working together, we'll call it the first full year together, we did about 25 transactions. So buys, sells, wholesale deals, flips, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Point is 25 some odd transactions. Some of those were double closings, as a matter of fact, where we bought the property and resold it the same day. Inherently built into those profits that were made in those transactions, or the cost of those acquisitions, were several thousands of dollars per transaction that went to title costs. Well, that adds up to a pretty healthy amount when you do it 25 times in a year. Even if it was only $1,000 a transaction, which typically it's more than that. Most of the time it's triple that, to be honest. That's $25,000. $2,000
times 4 years.
Huh?
Well, I mean, people are in business for more than 1 year. So what if you did that 4 years in a row?
Absolutely.
That's $100,000.
$100,000.
And then there's people going, boy, I sure like to buy a Tesla, but I can't afford one.
Right.
I think maybe you can.
Right. And that doesn't account for the fact that that $1,000 is an unrealistic amount that you'd be paying for title insurance. Typically, it's $2,500 to $3,500, sometimes even $4,000. It is scaled based on the sale price of the property. So the more expensive the house, for example, a $100,000 house versus a $400,000 house, it's going to be significantly more expensive with title insurance for that $400,000 house. So it was our goal, especially after having experience with one of the investors that we work with, who is frankly getting screwed with a title insurance policy he was getting issued on a property he was purchasing for.
Oh, hold on. He's not even getting a kiss on the cheek.
Oh, yeah. Right. You said it right.
Well, he's getting screwed.
Buying a $60,000 house that he's going to do complete as a fix and flip, which actually turned out to be a fix and rent. But his title costs, I'd have to look at the paperwork again, and I know we discussed on the podcast, they were like $4,800. Granted, he was doing a double close, so he was paying both buyer and seller closing costs. So he's paying his own and the seller's.
Well, that's not a double closing. It's
not double closing. You're right.
He's paying both sides of the HUD.
He's paying all closing costs in order to facilitate or appease the seller and get the purchase price that he was looking for, which is a method that's commonly used as an investor or a wholesaler, for example, in order to offer a deal to a seller who might be motivated or distressed and say, hey, listen, you're going to walk away from the closing with $50,000 minus your taxes that you have to pay because that's a state law. I'll pay all the closing costs. I'll eat all those costs on my side in order to appeal to them.
Yes.
That's why that happens. Now, so this conversation goes further when we're getting closer to the closing time and he calls me up and wants to run some numbers by me to see what I think. And we go over them and I realize he's got almost $5,000 in title fees and he was paying all the costs. Well, I kind of stepped in probably where I shouldn't have and got those fees negotiated down because at that point Dan and I were already doing numerous transactions and we knew that that number could potentially be variable, and saved him a couple grand when it came down to the nitty gritty and he actually closed the deal. Now that leads us to phase 2 of this conversation, which is what we decided we needed to do next.
What we're doing is walking up to the craps table and playing the don't come line when
That's
everybody else isn't.
Right.
Because we're going a little against the grain, but we've developed a title company that's positioned for investors, by investors, because we understand exactly what's going on and what the ins and outs are, and we've been able to control the costs to a favorable position for our investor partners.
Exactly. So if you're an investor, just to recap, if you're an investor in the Illinois market in particular, which we can also assist those that are not in this particular market, but it depends on what your availability for title is. If you're in Florida versus Virginia, for example, we can still talk. We will not be actually handling the transaction, but we can refer you to one of our title company partners in that state. But again, to go over it, we started a title company. So that's a big change. That's a derivative of this business that we decided to get into because of the fact we realized there could be such a huge potential benefit for investors that we already work with that didn't even realize that the opportunities or the monetary benefit that we're losing as a result of not even knowing what the real cost or benefits of working with a company like ours to save money on title is. Yeah, that was a lot to say.
It was. But I mean, there's only 2 ways to be more profitable. Either you got to make more or you got to spend less. And a lot of the things are not in your control.
Right.
Because you can't sell it for more. You can only sell it what the market will bear.
True.
You don't control that.
Right.
And you can negotiate with your contractors and you can negotiate the price of the house. But once you've tightened up every other thing that you can think of, there's one last thing that's never been touched. And we've cracked that open. And it's the cost of closing. So investors that are now driving their closings through Investor Title Services are realizing an increased profit on every deal as a result.
Absolutely. So company that he just named out there, called out there, is Investor Title Services LLC. We are a licensed and registered entity in the state of Illinois. We are underwritten by a major title company in the Chicago area. And all that really means is by working with this title company and having our own as a partner of theirs, they still handle the actual title insurance policy. We are the ones that are issuing it up front. We're negotiating on your behalf. We're offering the benefit of not only the experience level, but the dozens, just between you and me, of transactions that we've done. And then maybe potentially even the thousands that I've been tied to in the REO business because they see some value there. So effectively, to summarize that end of it, creating more opportunity to save money on these types of costs that would otherwise be fixed for everyone else by already having these established relationships and continuing to build them by doing more deals together and using Investor Title Services as your title company. Everyone benefits. Not only do we benefit in our deals, the investors that come to us can also benefit. And that's the real key to this, is it's an abundance mentality about how we can all work together, and everyone needs this anyway. Everyone needs title insurance, just like you need property insurance for your house, just like you need business insurance or liability insurance for your business. It's the same thing. Everyone needs it. Now, if we can make it more efficient and have more people in the pool, everyone saves more money. Is that a good way to put it?
It is, but you know what's the most exciting thing, in my opinion, about what this opportunity offers to investors? In almost every other category I can think of, Maybe you can come up with one. Typically, when you pay less, you're sacrificing something and you're getting less. We go out for dinner, you want a nice steak, it's $40, but if you get the chicken, it's $17. You're not getting the same thing.
Right.
You want to get the big fancy pickup truck all decked out. It costs this much. If you're willing to get the cloth seats and the dog dish hubcaps and a 2-wheel drive, well, then it's going to cost less. So you always get less. What we're offering is you get the same as you've always gotten, the same as you would ever expect to get. You're just going to pay less for it.
100% true. There's nothing being cut out of this in order to save money. You're getting the full steak, as Dan puts it. You're getting the prime rib on the plate. There's nothing missing. It's got all the fixings just like it normally would. We're just able to create an efficiency and cost by all of the deals and experience and relationships we've built here through our businesses collaborating together. So that's pretty exciting.
It almost functions kind of like a buying co-op, like
this is a great example.
The independent grocery stores are often tied to, I think they're national, like IGA.
Right.
Well, IGA doesn't own grocery stores. IGA is a buying co-op that all the little guys buy through, and because of the volume of all the little stores, they have a buying power with manufacturers of condiments and whatever.
Right.
So we're kind of serving that kind of same role. We've done so many deals that we've built relationships, we've built in efficiencies, we've built in the whole relationship aspect and knowing the right people at the right place that can do the right things. And now by offering what we're already doing for ourselves to other investors that are doing what we're doing, it just increases the volume and it potentially just gets better for everybody as we build this thing out.
One of the great analogies you brought up when we talked about it a couple weeks back was Costco.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a Costco membership, except we don't charge you for a membership fee.
Wait a minute, should we? No. Of course not.
You are receiving the benefit of a larger company or relationship, buying in bulk, if you will, and when you're a member, you receive a bigger discount by going to that store and buying the product there as opposed to going to your Jewels or Caputo's and buying the same thing. This is exactly or very similar to that same type of a situation. By coming to us and utilizing Investors Title Services, you're tapping into that same bulk pool due to all the transactions and relationships that are built and established and we've foundationalized, I don't know if that's a word, over the last few years. So I encourage you, if you are interested in learning more about it, which we're going to give the contact information out at the end here, to reach out to one of us and we can talk about it. Before we do that though, can we talk numbers? Maybe a little bit about numbers?
Okay.
About costs?
Sure.
So the example we gave you previously of our buddy who was buying a $60,000 property in which he was paying both the buyer and seller closing costs on, that number, which was just purely negotiated based on our relationships, had nothing to do with this title company we've started, but effectively the light bulb went off to create the title company as a result, reduced his closing costs down, from $4,800 to, what were they? You remember?
25,
I think. 26. It was 25 something. 25,
something like
25.80. So we'll call it $2,600. So that's a savings in that particular case, which we believe all parties involved were being exceptionally greedy, which is why we got involved. But that's a savings of over $2,000. So to put that in a global perspective, we don't have an exact number on each transaction that we can put out there as a flat rate, because the way our relationships work with this title company is the more volume that we bring to the table, that sliding scale continues to decrease, and the more opportunity it grows on the backside, which relates in a bigger cost savings. So there's never going to be a flat number per se. But what we can tell you is when you take your rate card from your typical title company or whoever you're working with on the buy or sell side, and we get a chance to look at what those costs are, you're going to be saving a significant amount of money. Is that fair?
It is. And the other thing that I was also going to suggest is that while certainly we can facilitate a closing for a homeowner that is buying or selling the house they do every 27 years. But our main focus is for investors because of the repeat business. But most importantly, if you're a new investor and you are looking to buy your first fix and flip project, or you finished rehabbing a house and it's your first retail sale, in Illinois, we close these deals with attorneys representing sellers and buyers. And what am I trying to say? A lot of people, if you're new, don't have an attorney. I mean, unless you have drunk driving problems, you're a criminal, these kinds of things. Maybe you had someone draw up a will for you, 7-10 years ago. Most people don't have like a lawyer handy. We have a lawyer that's contracted through us that can facilitate all the paperwork and all the documents that need to be prepared on your behalf, frankly, whether you're buying or selling. So we figure it's best to let everybody work in their best niche. Let title companies handle title, let attorneys handle the paperwork and that end of it. And if you happen to be working with a realtor and it's getting paid a commission to do what they do, then let them do what they do.
Absolutely. No, it's a great way to put it. I do agree. So yeah, and that benefit as well of our contracted attorney is we also have an opportunity to work with that price because that attorney is receiving much more business as a result, we'll call it, increased business and lead flow to them. Therefore, those costs can be reduced as well. So for those of you that are interested in learning more about our new company, Investors Title Services LLC, you can email Dan or myself. We do have a legitimate brick and mortar office. We do have a phone number. We have everything going. But the best way to reach us is email, and that is joe@investorstitleservicesllc.com, or you can reach Dan at investorstitleservicesllc.com. Did I say LLC the first time?
You did.
Oh, good.
So it's
perfect.
Investor is plural. Services is plural. Title is singular. And don't forget to like us on Facebook.
Well, yeah, we do have a Facebook page. We've got a bunch of members on there already, even though we just popped it up a couple weeks back. We've started doing these transactions, working with other investors. I mean, it's pretty exciting to see the opportunities that we can provide for other local investors that they didn't even know were out there, and then for us to provide that to them. I mean, it really is. I don't know. It makes me pretty excited. It makes me happy.
Well, wait a minute, Joe. You said we have brick and mortar, and it's out in Algonquin, Illinois, which is about 50 miles northwest of the Loop. For those of you that don't know the Chicago market, what if I lived an hour straight south of here? Do I have to do the closings in Algonquin?
No. So we have, through our title company relationships, we have locations throughout the northern Illinois area, actually southern Illinois as well. So you can effectively close at 27 different locations throughout the Chicagoland area. Typically, closings are held at the location closest to the property. That's the way most real estate contracts read, though that is a negotiable aspect. The buyer and seller agree to where they'd like to hold the closing. So we have multiple options on where you could hold that closing. There's the actual title company closer present that handles all the paperwork, deals with the wiring and the income and outtake of money, just like any other closing and title company situation.
And not only that, we can, if that arrangement is a wrinkle for any reason, we can actually send a closer right to a place where the buyer and seller agree.
Yeah, you can close at a library if you want to.
You could go to the library, you can meet at a Starbucks, and you can do it right there.
So we can send out a remote closer to any location. That's a great point that I wasn't even thinking about. In addition to the fact that we have a location in Algonquin that can be physically used for closings as well.
Absolutely.
So if you're interested in learning more about this opportunity and really boosting some of the benefits for your business in 2018, please reach out to us. Again, it's joe@investorstitleservicesllc.com or dan@investorstitleservicesllc.com. Check us out on Facebook, Investors Title Services. I think that's just how you look it up because I'm not a Facebooker. I think we'll put the podcast on Facebook.
Why not?
Yes. I love it.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up? I think that's great information. That's going to blow up people's heads right then and there.
should. More
Right.
information that's, good.
Right.
Well, because this isn't my show and I'm fortunate to be a guest, but I've been a returning guest, so I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And as we get into that season, hopefully everyone had a prosperous 2017 and aim high for 2018.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you, Dan, for being on the show again for episode number 69 of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. All right. Happy Hanukkah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investoремpowermentchicago.com or TannisGroupRealty.com.